All right, Colin Morris from the Bench to Booth podcast. We just had an excellent second episode with Mr. Kevin Minnick from Ep2, longtime South Jersey high school sports reporter. But real quick, before we start the episode, I just wanted to hop on here and let everyone know of a cool event happening this weekend. Sunday, March 29th at Rowan University, me and Coach Mike Ricci will have the honor of calling the 2026 Senior All-Star Game at 5:30 p.m. So that's the Senior All-Star Game for the 2026 South Jersey High School Basketball Stars. The rosters are loaded. It's a great event put on by D2 and Roderick Boyd. So we're very honored for the opportunity to call. Once again, at 5:30 p.m., me and Coach Ricci on the call in the live stream. So if you can tune in, I'll leave all the links below and in our social medias. But for now, enjoy the episode. It was a good one. Very excited to have on for the second episode, longtime reporter for South Jersey Sports, Mr. Kevin Minnick. Mr. Minnick, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you taking your time.
No problem. I told you the first time I met you that if you ever need anything, you let me know.
Absolutely.
So here we are.
And we met at Holy Cross probably a couple months ago at this point.
A month or two ago, yeah.
The championship for the Burlington County. I was calling with Dan Wilkins, but we're excited that you're here at the LMC and Highland Regional. We have a bunch of good things lined up today to talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about your background a little bit. We'll talk about the basketball, kind of the postseason and the winding down of the basketball season for 2026, and then we'll get a little preview of baseball going on, and we'll see what we have time for. But I'm going to turn it over to Coach now. He's going to start with, kind of some background things here.
What's that saying? What about the rabbit and catching the rabbit and the whole thing? Like, I don't know that. What's that saying now?
I have no idea.
Now
I have no idea.
You have to sit and answer questions. All right, so 30 years, roughly 30 years, you've been a high school reporter. We met when you were at the Gloucester County Times, right?
Yeah.
And then you went from there to the Courier?
Correct.
Right. And then from there to NJ.com. But you did some stuff on South Jersey Varsity Radio. How'd you get involved with that?
South Jersey Varsity Radio.
The ESPN Radio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the ESPN guys in AC.
Yeah, how'd you get involved in that?
All right. Well, first of all, this is your 38.
Oh, 38.
So you're underestimating me. That's okay. But yes, I did meet you.
I know you were that old.
I did meet you when you led Paulsboro to state championship your first year, with arguably one of the greatest high school athletes South Jersey's had in Kevin Harvey.
Yep.
I remember that.
Very lucky to have.
But going back to ESPN Radio, geez, that's just a matter of me with connections, knowing different guys doing different things.
Yeah.
And at that point, they were doing a Saturday morning show, and I think they had 2 or 3 different segments.
Right.
I was on there, Mike McGarry was on there from Atlantic City Press, and there might have been somebody else here or there. And then just basically I had like a 15-minute segment, and they just kind of just shot things at us, and we responded, and that actually lasted, I want to say, a couple of years. And they went through at least 3 different hosts, I think it was.
Right.
But just, I guess at that point, they wanted to broaden their horizons, so to speak, and not so much worry about the Cal, mm-hmm. and dive more into all of South Jersey at that point. Mm-hmm. So that's where I came in. And like I said, 15, 20-minute segment on a Saturday morning, pretty much live. I think we taped it maybe once or twice because of people having schedule conflicts and all. But other than that, it was good. I mean, I had my opening music. I asked them and told them what to play for me, mm-hmm. set that all up, and it was good. It was something I had at that point added to my resume. Not that I needed anything on a resume, but just something else to do. It was pretty good.
So I'm confused because you went to University of Maryland.
Correct.
You're wearing a Georgetown shirt.
Correct.
I don't understand, but maybe you can explain that. But you went into journalism.
Yes.
Did you picture yourself 38 years later, or however long it's been, doing what you're doing now, which is covering high school sports, or did you think about when you were going through school doing something other than high school sports?
Oh no, I was going to be a lawyer.
Is that right?
I was going to be a lawyer. Oh, absolutely.
Really?
This is nothing. This was not the plan going into college at all. First of all,
you went into school.
I went into school fully intent on 4 years at Maryland and going to law school.
Interesting.
Wow.
The Georgetown is because my oldest son went to Georgetown.
Okay.
My other son went to American. So we covered a little bit of the DMV there.
Right.
When I went to college, 1988, obviously a long time ago. Fully intent on going to law school. My grades in high school were pretty good. Had a couple scholarships through law enforcement-oriented organizations. So my intent was law school. Got there. I remember sitting in, it might have been a pre-law class, and that pre-law class, if I remember right, was a Tuesday, Thursday, 2 to 3:15. By the time I'd taken that class twice, I realized that's not what I wanted to do. At that time, one of my roommates worked at the student newspaper. Saw what he was doing. I'd always had interest in sports. Never really thought of writing. My grammar and my English and all that was always very good, but I never thought about writing anything. Saw what they were doing. I'm like, man, he's having too much fun. And I switched my major from pre-law to journalism school after the first semester. Long story short, that roommate was Frank Isola, who, if a lot of people, I don't know if they know who Frank Isola is. Eventually, he worked at the New York Daily News, a couple other papers, covered the Knicks, covered the Mets, does stuff on Sirius Radio for NBA, works at ESPN, the whole bit. Yes, he was my roommate for 3 years. So I got into that, got into the journalism school, and then
isn't he on ESPN? He does the
he does Around the Horn. We did Around the Horn. He does. He'll occasionally be he'll sub in for Michael Wilbon or
pardon the interruption,
Tony Cornell. Yeah,
that's right.
I was getting ready to ask about that, so I'm glad you brought it up.
So he was my roommate in college for 3 years, and then so I got into that. Go through journalism school. My grades were pretty good. Get out of there, and now a connection with my father had with a woman who ran this county paper down Salem. My father, I guess, when he used to see her when he was umpiring games, must have told her what I was doing. Oh yeah, okay, great. When he's out of school, let me know. Blah blah blah. Next thing I know, now you got to remember this is almost 40 years ago when this happened. So money is not, money's nothing. I mean, we're talking like nothing.
Right.
I got it. She hires me sight unseen, and I had a job. Like I graduated basically a little like 2 weeks before Memorial Day. Like I was working 2 weeks later. I had a job. So at that point, I'm thinking I'm pretty lucky. But I'm not really, I really don't know where I'm at. And I don't know where it's at, like kind of on the pecking order of things, except I know it's pretty low.
You're entry level.
I know it's entry low. I know it's pretty low. So worked there for a couple of years. That place is owned by the Gloucester County Times. Go from there to Gloucester County Times. Worked there for a number of years. Eventually I become the editor, sports editor there.
Right.
Get away from the writing aspect of things. Now I'm management. Never really cared for it.
Times is gone now, right?
Times is gone now, yes. Yeah. Got back into writing more. Gentleman who worked at the Times is now at the Courier, an executive. Would you like to come over to the Courier? Yes, because at that point in time, it's like wherever you're at, after that, it was the Courier or the Inquirer. They were the two places you wanted to be if you wanted to be around here and do what that was all about.
Yeah.
Go to Courier, spent 15 years at Courier, and then the last 9, I guess this is year 9 now at NJ.com. So,
I mean, what is it about high school sports that you never wanted to do anything other than cover high school?
Well,
sports?
I did do other things. I mean, I covered the World Series when Joe Carter beat the Phillies. I've covered PGA.
But a majority of your career has been high school,
yes, right? The majority's been high school.
Yeah.
Earlier, and before it's kind of really specialized, I had opportunities to do other things, and I did. So I covered U.S. Open and PGA Championships in golf. I remember I covered Shaquille O'Neal's first game against the Sixers. Like I said, Joe Carter's home run. I've done all that stuff. But high school was always the main part of the job, so to speak. The thing with high school is it always changes. Every 4 years, really every year, but it's a cycle. And it's the same cycle for you as a coach. Right? Every 4 years, you got a freshman group coming in, now they're seniors, here comes the next group. So there's always going to be another cycle. There's always going to be, in that cycle, there's new kids, and with new kids come new parents. So you have an audience. Now your audience is going to change, because now these parents that, when their kids were 6th, 7th, 8th graders, who knows if they're really paying attention to high school stuff. But now their kids are in high school, that all changes. So now you have a brand new audience, so to speak, that comes into the equation.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I did enough stuff away from high school that it was like, people think like covering the Phillies or covering a pro beat or something like that is it the ultimate? It depends on what your take is.
Right.
To me, it's not, because once it's not fun anymore. Covering the Phillies is great for when you start doing it all, but then it's a business.
Right.
And these guys, most of these guys are not. They kind of forget where they came from, and you don't have that relationship where you can just go talk to a kid and you can just say, "Hey," well, in fact, when I talked to you, I said, "We're just talking."
Yeah. And it seems like when you mentioned earlier before we came on the air, you were talking about one of the guys that you text with.
Davis Schneider.
I can text Davis Schneider whenever I want.
Right.
And Davis never lost the understanding of where he came from. Some people have. I think some guys have, and maybe that's a product of the tremendous success that they had. But other guys, I remember, I think it was last year, there was a time when Davis, Joey Loperfido from Haddonfield, and Buddy Kennedy from Millville all landed on the Blue Jays at the same time. When can you ever remember in any sport 3 South Jersey kids playing in a professional sport, let alone on the same
together
team at the same time? Boom, boom, boom. Texted him. Davis, I need you to give me a comment. You guys are together now. What's it like? Texted Joey Loperfido. Texted Buddy Kennedy. Within 45 minutes, all 3 guys got back to me. I didn't need a whole lot. I just needed a little something. Right. But the point was that they got back to me, and it wasn't like I got to go through the Blue Jays PR department. No, all I wanted was just a little comment. They realized where they're coming from. They knew, because they had all played together in high school. They were all the same age. Right. Boom, done.
What's really cool about Davis is I'll work out sometimes over at Endurance Sports Academy in West Berlin. So that's kind of like the Victus Vandals travel organization. And Davis played under the owner there. So what he did in the offseason, and it's funny, the owner, Mick Geis, who owns it still, he was telling us how, Davis, obviously was in the World Series, so his offseason was shortened quite a bit, but when he was home, he was over there helping 13 to 17-year-olds train in the offseason in the winter, and that's so cool to me, because I talked about it last week when we did our first episode, is like giving back, and you talked about giving back to kind of the basketball community and kind of the South Jersey sports community altogether. But I think that is the coolest thing, that he just comes back and he's Toronto, up there playing in the World Series, doing what he does. He's got it all good, and he doesn't have to do any of that, but he still does. And
one of the kids too, from Heights, Caden Boda, another kid. He works out a couple kids that play for Haddon Heights. One of them, Ben Alexander, is a catcher there. Comes out, and before he got drafted, he'd come back and. Right. I mean, no ego, just wanted to come back and give back to those that supported him. So.
And I'll tell you a very quick Caden Bodine story. I covered Caden Bodine. I saw him play an awful lot. Never did I imagine the success that he's achieved. Never. I never went to a game where Caden Bodine did not swing at the first pitch of every at-bat and put the ball in play. To the point where because Caden, most of the time he was a switch hit, but most of the time he was batting left-handed. Because you don't,
right.
There's not a whole ton of lefties, but seemingly every time Caden was up, he was left-handed. So every time I wanted to get a photo of him, I would have to get up and get on the other side to get a photo. And I could never, 9 times out of 10, by the time I got there, the first pitch was already delivered and he had already swung. Never did I see him take a pitch.
Right.
Never. It's crazy, and I told people that before. I'm like, it's mind-boggling how I never saw him take a pitch, and he put the ball in play every single time. He didn't get hit every time, but he put the ball in play every time. And back with Davis, people around here some people, if they're not paying attention, may not know who Davis Schneider is.
Right.
The mustache, the whole thing, right? Davis Schneider is a god in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
For a guy who plays, I don't know, 80 to 90 games, he's a platoon guy.
Yeah.
He played, but he'll play anywhere and everywhere, wherever they want him. But he is like this god in Toronto. The mustache, just because he doesn't have that sort of pompous attitude, so to speak, that I'm a professional player on the Blue Jays, and I don't have time for you. He pretty much has time for people. So,
absolutely.
So from that aspect, like you're saying, giving back, I'm completely not surprised with that at all.
Yeah. One last thing before we jump over to the basketball stuff, and then we'll go to the baseball stuff.
Sure.
So 38 years you've been doing this, and I've been coaching for 30 years, and one of the things that, from a coach's perspective, from basketball, the changes that I've seen over those 30 years, kids initially, when I first started coaching, would play for their school. There was no transferring. They were playing with their friends. There was more of a team concept. And as time has gone on, like from my perspective, it just seems like you went from 5 guys playing together to 3 guys playing together to 2 guys, and now everybody's kind of, doing their own thing, and if they don't like it, they're transferring. What's the biggest changes you've seen over the last 30 years, regardless of sports, just overall, football, basketball, baseball? What are some of the biggest things that you've seen over the last 30 years since you started?
Well, that's a long time to see change, but I mean, you bring up the aspect of playing for your school, and obviously, there were transfer situations 30 years ago, not nearly what they are today.
Right.
My personal opinion is, I think there are too many kids out there, and you can argue with me till you're blue in the face. Parents, in my opinion, are too soft on their kids, and kids feel as though they are too entitled to things to work.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest differences from even 10, 20 years ago is that kids, if it doesn't go their way, well, we're going to tell mom or dad, and then mom and dad get on the phone and tell Coach X, Y, or Z, Johnny thinks he should have more playing time, or how come Johnny's not playing more? Okay, I said when my kids were growing up. Now my kids played a couple of varsity sports. They did not play baseball, basketball, football, but they played tennis. One golfed and bowled. I don't think Rob played volleyball, but he played tennis.
Where'd they go, if I can
Washington
ask?
Township.
Washington Township? Okay, cool.
And I said, I'm not going to be that parent.
Yeah.
Okay? So if my kid doesn't make the starting lineup, okay, and he comes to me and says, Dad, what am I going to do? I should be doing this. That's on you.
Yeah.
That is now on you. That has nothing to do with me. Okay? May I agree or not disagree, whatever? Okay, maybe yes, but that's on you.
Yeah.
And I think kids nowadays feel, and certainly not everybody, certainly not everybody, but there are kids out there who feel as though they are entitled to certain things, and they don't work as hard as maybe they could, or they expect, I'm a senior this year. Well, I'm a senior and I've been here for 4 years. That's my spot.
Right.
No,
right.
It's not your spot, because if I'm the coach and that kid who's in ninth grade is better than you, he's playing.
Right.
So if you want to play, in essence, you got to prove it.
Yeah.
Show me.
Yeah. Same. I mean, I went through it. We were talking about this before. My son's in 8th grade. He started in the summer. He started in the fall. Season started. He started the first couple games, and he got the 6th man, and he was 7th man. And he came to me and he's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, well, you either work harder or go talk to your coach and figure out what's wrong, but I'm not doing anything. And I said, some of this is on you. I'm like, you didn't take it in the summertime and the fall. You didn't put the work in that you needed to, and some of these other guys did.
Right.
And there's very few of us, the situation you just mentioned with your kids and with mine, that have that mentality. The quick response for most parents now is, he should be playing over him. He's better than him. He's a freshman. He shouldn't be playing over a senior. Well,
And if they don't, and then it's just like transfer. And one thing we talked about, I can't remember. We talked about Highland, but we've talked about it before, like with Hatton Heights, is like you ran into the situation where kids would often go to Paul VI, Bishop Eustace, like you would lose kids because of that. Highland runs into the situation a lot where usually, we'll lose a couple kids at private school. It's always going to happen. But Highland, what happens is kids will come here and then they'll transfer out, which right. I don't know which is better, which is worse. I don't think either of them are good for the school. But I feel like more of Hatton Heights, it was more like kids would go to different schools to start, and then Highland, they would end up leaving. But I did want to ask one more question before we jumped into basketball. So for me, when I kind of started getting into journalism and started getting into commentating, I started doing the interviews on Instagram and stuff, which did really well for me this season. But I had a couple coaches, obviously, who kind of like gave me the chance, right? Kind of obviously gave me the time. Like that wasn't even the consideration, but would invest in me, would always answer me. Obviously, coaches was really the first one, just because I started the program at Highland. Tom Freeman over at Delsey, always someone who really appreciated my work and always would give me the time. So for you, obviously it was a different time, but what were those kind of first like players and coaches, if you can remember, that kind of gave you that first opportunity?
Well, I guess one of the things is, I guess you're trying to, in essence, you're trying to build a relationship with someone, right?
Right, absolutely.
And you're just starting out. So, you want to let these people know kind of what you're doing, that you're just starting out. You're, this is kind of your job, so to speak. Most guys, I think, are going to be pretty receptive to that. I would say, one of the first things I learned in journalism school too is that, you never want to ask somebody a yes or no question,
right?
Because there are those who will simply say yes or no, and then you're kind of like,
that's it.
You're waiting for something else.
That's it.
And it's not coming, and now you get your brain's freezing for a second. You don't know what to do next. But I think most people nowadays are receptive to what we're doing. They understand it's part of the job. We're not. And I think most have an understanding that it's specific to us. It's high school sports. This is high school sports. This is not life or death. There are way too many more things going on. It could be, something at home. Yeah. There's way too many more things that are much more important in the grand scheme of things than high school sports. Now, am I a bad guy for saying that because that's my job? No, I don't think so. I think it's high school sports.
It's reality.
It's, but we're here to enhance the high school experience, so to speak. We're here to highlight your kids. So I think most people would be, should be receptive to what we're trying to do, and realize that, 95% of the time, in all honesty, 95% of the time, it's positive.
Right.
From my perspective, when I've had to do those negative stories, the stories that people don't want to talk about. They think you're coming after them. You don't like this, you don't like that. Oh, you're a township guy, you hate Gloucester Catholic. That whole line of thinking, like, it's irrelevant.
Yeah,
right.
What I always liked about like Kevin's coverage of high school sports is like he covers the games, he'll highlight the kids. He does a good job of like, whether it's a game he's covering or a playoff game, regular season game. But then, he always reaches out to the coaches and talks about, is there a guy on your team that we could highlight? Is there someone on your team that, has made an impact? Maybe a guy that's not like a big time player on your team. Could be a manager. I remember the one year you did that story on Kyle, my manager that I had at Haddon Heights. And that's what I like about your coverage of sports is, you're not just focused on the best players, the best teams. You kind of spread it out.
I really don't know this mantra of mine, I don't know when it started, but I've always had this philosophy, and I've put it out there, and I've said it and stuff, is that everybody has a story.
I was just getting ready to say this too.
Everybody has a story. It's kind of my job to find that story. Now, I can definitely use your help along the way. If you have a kid who's going through something, or the manager, or anything along those lines.
You did that story about Brendan Shannon, right? With his mental health.
Yes,
that helped a lot of people.
Those are the kind of stories that you want to tell.
Yeah.
I don't think most readers want to keep reading, X beat Y. A game story. You need to have other stories. There are other stories to tell. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like how my thought is that, there are other stories out there. There are kids that have stories. And do I know them all? No. But that's where the coach can come in. And every time I send out a preseason information form, do you have any other story ideas? It doesn't have to be about the best kid on the team. It could be that kid who is the 12th man and has been the 12th man for 4 years. But he has never missed a practice. He has never missed a game. He supports his teammates. Little things. I mean, and just, I did one piece that kind of jumps out at me was last year at Morristown. Mm-hmm. There was I don't know where he stands now as far as schooling is concerned, but an autistic kid who was the DJ. Every home game, DJ'd every home game Morristown basketball. Put him in senior night, And we've all seen those highlights where, they kind of set things up a little bit. Well, they set it up. Blake was going to get a chance to score. So Blake scores. The place goes nuts. I didn't go. It's one of those things where I wish you would have told me before this happened, and maybe I could have came or prepared a little bit more. But anyway, coach sends me the video. I said, this is good. I mean, can I run with it? Can I use it? So I got permission from the parents. I put together a story on it. The video, and I had my son help me on it on TikTok. The video did, last time I looked, and this was a year ago, it was like 685,000 views. It just went bonkers. Right. Wow. It blew up. So those are the kind of things that, this kid throws 100 miles an hour. That's great. We know that. It happens all the time, whatever. But we don't know. There's other stories out there that, going back to what you were saying, Colin, about, communicating with coaches and having coaches. They're the kind of things that I would like to see more of. Am I going to get to every one of them? Maybe, maybe not. But at least it's out there. Yeah. And now I know, it's a little bit different, and those stories that are a little bit different will resonate with readers a little bit more.
So 30 years, basketball, football, and baseball. What's your favorite one to cover?
Baseball.
Really?
Why's that?
Baseball. I've always been a baseball guy.
Do you like my takes on the Phillies or not? I mean, you say
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes your takes are okay. Your takes are all right. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with anybody's take on anything. But if your take is not specific to you and the Phillies, but in general, if your take is something to me, how can you say this kid is all South Jersey? Why? How is Highland 20th in South Jersey in the top 20? My reaction would be, okay, or it's or I don't know what I'm talking about. Would be, okay, if they are not good enough to be there, okay, who are you replacing them with and why?
Why? Yeah.
Why? If you're that adamant about something, how can you put that kid there? Okay, well, who am I taking off?
Right.
And if I'm taking him off, why am I taking him off?
And one thing you add, I know in your, if you're Twitter or Instagram or whatever, is like the opinions are mine. And I think a lot of people do say that.
Yeah.
But that's, I feel like that's...
Top 10s out or 20 out, you do that.
A lot of things, because NJ.com is more statewide, obviously. There's just more of a statewide perspective on things.
Yeah.
So we don't really get into a South Jersey top 20 for whatever sport. We don't really do that. Football's a little different because everybody plays under the West Jersey umbrella. That's one thing. But baseball, basketball, other sports, so as everybody else doesn't have to kind of follow me, so there's not like a North Jersey top 20 or Central Jersey top 20, I just kind of do that, and it's just something I put out there. It's mine.
Yeah.
I don't care. You like it? Like I tell them.
You like it?
You like it, you love it, debate it. I don't care.
Yeah.
But don't tell me that somebody doesn't belong and you don't know what you're talking about unless you can back it up. And when that happens, it's crickets.
I used to tell them never to put us in the top 20. I said, don't put me in. Remember I used to say that to you? Don't put me in.
There's coaches that don't want to be in the top 20.
It's just more. It just adds more to their plate, I feel like. So, I mean, that kind of pressure. So just because we're running just a little bit low on time, I wanted to move over to more, I mean, we've been talking about, but just more baseball, especially coming into the 2026 year. So last year, obviously, you had your champion, Shalleck, Haddonfield, Toms River East, and Cherokee. So how about you last year when you were covering that? What games did you go to? Because obviously, I don't remember specifically what games did you go to, and what about each team that won each sectional title?
I don't remember every game I went to.
Well, I mean, like out of the sectional finals, like what? Like, did you go to any of like Audubon or any of those games in the?
Did I go to?
Did you go there?
Yeah.
Or like the Cherokee. Well, like
the problem
was this last year, right?
Last year, yes.
So you're talking about last year's baseball stuff. The problem is, I would have to go back and look because I really, honestly, I can't give you an answer. I don't remember.
You do go to a lot of games a year, so that's fair.
Yeah.
People should not. Yeah. I do go to a lot of games. I went to 75 basketball games this season. And people tell me I didn't know what I was talking about, right?
Welcome to our world.
I've seen enough. I've seen enough to make a pretty good judgment. I would have to go baseball-wise because the state sometimes did not scatter dates.
Right.
So baseball may have had all 4 sectional finals on the same day. Basketball is split. Baseball would do 2 and 4 on one day, 1 and 3 on the other day, non-pubs kind of in between.
Right.
So as far as that was concerned, I really don't remember. I'm guessing that if I had to pick where I was at last year for a sectional final, I was at Cherokee.
Right.
But, I'll tell you what my philosophy was or is in the tournament is that as any tournament progresses, you're going to end up ultimately seeing somebody probably 3 or 4 times.
Right.
So at the beginning, you probably want to go to a game where if you're like a bracketologist, so to speak, these two teams.
You going to like the 8-9 game?
I'm probably going to an 8-9 game.
Right.
I'm going to a 7-10. I'm going to a game where I may not see these two teams again because they may not get to the semifinal or final. Some of them sometimes will, but for the most part, you want to kind of work your way through to the point where, okay, if I'm going to see Cherokee in the sectional final, I'm probably not going to a Cherokee game until that point, because once I get to the sectional final, I very well may see Cherokee at least 2 more times.
Right.
So that's kind of my take on that. It's hard when you're the only person Like, I'm the only person responsible for South Jersey.
Right.
I can get a part-timer here and there to cover a different game, but that's usually closer to, when they really are at the utmost importance, a final.
Right. And with like me this year, when I did the interviews for basketball, I found myself at Delsey twice. So what happened was, and I know you were at this game too, it was at Mullen Middle School. It was Timber Creek and Winslow, which was a good game. And that was like early. I think that might have been a 5 o'clock game. And I remember seeing you there. And then after me and Eli shot right down to Delsey, just because it was not that bad of a drive from there. So then we saw Delsey. They played Pinelands, which actually ended up being a better game than I think anyone expected it to be. But then they played Cumberland next. We were like, all right, well, we got to go to that. That's a great game. And then they ended up winning. I thought Cumberland would have won that game. So, like, anyone watching from Delsey, sorry. But and then after that game, they ended up playing Deptford in the semifinal. So they ended up winning that as well. So that was kind of a good run for Delsey. But I asked about that because I kind of made, I don't know if it was really a mistake, but it kind of ended up happening that way and falling that way. So that was.
I really try not to cover the same team back to back.
Right.
In the tournament, especially like that.
Yeah.
I try to. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you do. I think I did not cover Deptford back to back, but we covered Deptford back to back because of the location and the time.
Right.
So it worked out better that way. Mullen Middle School, no disrespect to the district, that place needs some lights.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's the first thing.
That place needs some lights. And the creek needs to figure out what's going on with the floor. If they fix the floor, get that floor fixed over there, and everything will be done. But Mullen Middle School needs some lights.
That is the first thing Eli somebody walked in. He's like, I am not taking pictures here. He's like, you're not gonna be able to see them.
It was the darkest. It was the darkest gym I've been all season.
And it wasn't even like, it was a decent size, I feel like, for a middle school gym, but like there was like very little seating, so it was just like everyone on top of each other, like, and they were like super strict about us standing on like the baseline. I know you were in like the corner and I was in a different corner, but
I want to get into one before we
go ahead.
We're going to jump to baseball because I want to talk about what some of the top teams, top players are. I got one more basketball question because that's where and this actually comes from Eric Cassidy, because Eric and I were talking. I told him you were going to be on here. What are your thoughts about like how Philly has a Catholic league and doing something like that in Jersey, like having a Catholic league and a public league? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the Philadelphia Catholic League, and there are way more Catholic schools in Philly than there are Catholic schools in South Jersey. You can have a Catholic League tournament if you wanted. But I don't think you need a Catholic league. There's not enough schools. In my opinion, there's not enough schools.
Okay.
And there's a big difference between some of the schools. A really big difference.
Yeah, especially up north, right? Yeah.
Now, if you want a New Jersey Catholic league, they probably won't go for it.
No.
There's too many people out there that don't want to deal with the administrative aspects of things. The busing, the time, the money it costs to do this, that, or the other. So
distance with some of those schools too is pretty far. Like who was it? It was oh my God, St. Joe, whoever Paul VI played in their playoff game, and they were saying, I remember my buddy was telling me how it was like, oh yeah, St. Joe's is like 2 streets away from me in New York school, and it was like a 2.5 hour drive just to come down to PVI to play them in Haddonfield. Yes, yeah.
That's, for people that don't know, that is strictly set up by the state, and the state takes. It's based by what they call a northering number, and it's all based on location, where you are, where you're located in the state. Obviously, there are more non-public schools in North Jersey than there are in what we would call traditional South Jersey, say Trenton, Bordentown area down. That's why St. Joe Metuchen, St. Peter's Prep, which is in Jersey City, we're in South Jersey. Right. It's all based upon location and the fact that there are far more non-pubs in North, and the state wants to split them in half. So to split them in half, we have to go further north,
Right.
in essence, to get that balance. Should St. Peter's or St. Joe Met be considered a South Jersey school? Probably not, but they want that balance.
Right, absolutely.
I would much rather, in all honesty, forget about the North and South and just put everybody in the non-public bracket and let them fight it out because, let's be honest, South Jersey basketball was not good this year. It just wasn't. Yeah. In comparison to the North
yep.
and in comparison to previous years.
We talked about that before the playoffs started. We thought 7, 8 teams in each group could have won.
It was, yeah.
But that doesn't mean
super wide open.
That doesn't mean it was really good. It just means that
it was not. Hey, it is what it is. Yeah. And I'm done, and I was done many years ago sugarcoating things. You don't like my opinion? Fine. I really, in essence, I kind of don't care.
Yeah.
To a degree. But South Jersey basketball was not good.
Yeah.
It was not good.
I remember you made a couple posts about that on your Twitter and highlighting, these many schools won from North Jersey and whatnot compared to other years. But real quick, just before we wrap up, we got about 5 minutes left here. But with baseball coming in this year, you had your state champs last year from South Jersey, Cherokee, Gloucester Catholic, obviously added another one. So for this year, there's a couple question marks, revolving around a couple baseball programs in South Jersey. Collingswood, I know, is a big one, had a couple big losses there. I know Shalleck obviously graduating, a couple big players, and teams that kind of went on some runs in the playoffs that weren't exactly like, oh, this team's going to win this group. I know Vineland ended up making it all the way to the semifinal, and then teams like that. So in terms of baseball this year in South Jersey, what teams do you expect to stand out off the top of your head? I'm not looking for specific details here, but teams right away off the top of your head. Obviously, your Gloucester Catholics, your St. Augustine's.
Like when the season starts, you have an idea of who's back.
Yeah.
This whole transfer stuff throws a monkey wrench into things because sometimes you don't know.
Right.
You just don't know what kids decided to up and leave and whatnot. But when you're doing, at least when I will do this preseason, my South Jersey top 20, you can pretty much bank on the usual suspects.
Right.
So the usual suspects are Gloucester Catholic, St. Augustine, Eustis, Cherokee,
right,
Eastern, Northern Burlington. There's 6, 7 right off the top of my head right there that I know have certain guys back and that will be pretty good because they always are.
Right.
And it's pitching, right?
To a degree, it's pitching. To a degree, it's no secret. Certain schools have arms and certain schools don't.
Right.
Gloucester Catholic is a preseason nationally ranked team.
Yeah.
Most people around here will say, how can Gloucester Catholic be preseason nationally ranked team? Who's going to throw? They have one returning guy, Jude Morgan.
It's been that way the last 3 years.
Who's going to throw for them?
Yeah.
Gloucester Catholic seemingly always has 6 kids that have thrown, 4, 5, 6 innings of varsity, that now all of a sudden are there 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
And you're like, well, I don't know how good they're going to be because I don't know haven't seen these kids pitch.
And that's how it was a couple years ago with Smollett. He had thrown I think maybe 8 innings his junior year, and then all of a sudden his senior year he was going to Coastal Carolina and he was their number 1, and then it was like, who else is going to throw for him then? And then, like you said, Jude Morgan kind of stepped in. It's like a cycle effect for them.
I think baseball more than maybe most sports, kids really do. Their future becomes impacted by what they've done in the summer. And some kids, whether it's Perfect Game or in New Jersey Prep Baseball, whatever organization they seemingly play for,
right.
They blow up in the summer. Like, you haven't seen them do anything at the varsity level.
Right.
They blow up in the summer, and now all of a sudden, this roster has 10 kids with D1 commits. Now, baseball's a different animal as far as scholarships are concerned, they're not full scholarships. These kids are not getting full rides like basketball and football players are, but they are going to Division I programs.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, they have arms. So Gloucester Catholic jumps out at me. I'm thinking about it the other day. Who's going to throw for Gloucester Catholic? There's going to be a lot of freshmen and sophomores who we pretty much haven't seen, but played for Brooklyn and Legion,
right,
and have all this. They have a kind of a resume. They don't have a varsity. They don't have a high school resume yet, but they're going to be there. I think St. Augustine's going to be very good.
And I feel like Gloucester Catholic always figures it out. And as we run out of time here, though, we might have to have you on again, maybe at the end of the year or something like that, to discuss baseball postseason, or maybe in the summer or something. We'll have to talk about that. But Coach, you anything to add?
I appreciate you coming
comments?
in. Like I said, Kevin and I have known each other a long time, and he's done. I appreciate a lot of things that he's done, not just for coverage of like when my Paulsboro days and Heights days, and even showing up here in the first game I coached here,
right.
but and I send him a message at the end every year just thanking him for what he does for South Jersey basketball specifically. So we really appreciate you coming in, talking to us.
We're probably out of time because I do tend to get myself going a little bit.
Yeah.
So
It was good. I would sit here for a little longer.
I will. You want me back, like I told you before. I hope anything you need, I'll help you out. So
Absolutely. We only met at Holy Cross about a month or two ago, but obviously following all your stuff. I mean, since I'm a junior now, I've been following your stuff since I was a freshman. My dad is from North Jersey. He's up near Pompton Lakes, so he moved down here, and he's like, Kevin Minnick's been doing this since I moved down here like 25 years ago. So not to make you feel old, but
I am old. I just had a birthday. I am old. Believe
there
me.
you go. Well, happy belated. But for us at Bench to Booth, we thank you for tuning in. Colin Morris, Coach Mike Ricci, Mr. Kevin Minnick, thank you again for coming on. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week for episode number 3.